As you look at the children of Israel and they're being delivered from Egypt, from bondage, from slavery, as you look at that and you look at how God moves within the nation to get them from Egypt, hopefully into the promised land within a very short time, they missed it, end up in the wilderness for 40 years, for an entire generation. You see a pattern there in how God moves within our lives. There's a pattern established, and this is what I want to show you. I want to show you this pattern, and I'm going to give you 3 simple points. When God begins to move in your life, you are going to come across times that are hard. You're going to come to times in your life that are almost unbearable. You're going to wonder, how can I get through this? You're going to come through times where there may be some tragedy. Things happen. And here's the problem that most believers make, is they don't understand how God works through problems. They don't understand how God works through different episodes in life. They don't understand how God works through the obstacles that come our way. And because they don't understand, they cannot navigate through it. They don't know how to navigate through it. Or many times their prayer is, get me out of this. Just get me out of it. Do whatever you have to, but get me out of it. And they don't understand that God doesn't always purpose to get you out of it. In fact, sometimes He wants to get you through it. So this is what I'm going to give you. So number one, never cut and run. Don't ever cut and run. Whatever you face, don't ever cut and run. Now, some of you don't know this story. Some you do know this story. But about a year and a half ago, it was politically driven. There were certain city officials that decided that we had gotten too big in the city. They decided that we had gotten too big for the zoning on this property, which is not true, but they decided we did. And they decided, it was a political move by, and I'm not going to mention any names, but it was a political move by one of our elected officials to close us down. And it was a time when I made a run for city council, and to close us down would take away my thunder and hopefully get me to leave the city. So there was a political move to close us down. And we got bombarded with code enforcement, with fire department and all kinds of things. We had to invest about $80,000 in upgrades and equipment that they had inspected and had okayed before, but now wasn't okay. And the goal was to bankrupt the church and to shut us down. Now, I have to tell you, I'm a fighter, and I went to war. I put my boxing gloves on. We had meetings in my office where I told them, you try this, you see what happens, and you're going to see what I'm capable of doing back, because I'm coming after you. I will politically ruin you. I will cause your name to be dirt. I'll put you all over the news. Your career is toast, so you just try it. So they backed up a little bit, but they had enough juice going for them that they would not quit. It has been a year and a half of living hell for me. In fact, there were times where my friends, some friends said, Scott, just leave, man. Just leave. This is a battle you cannot win. You're fighting City Hall. Just leave. And I prayed all kinds of prayers. I said, if I go to jail, I go to jail, but I am not shutting down. We'll continue to house people. You put me in jail, and I'll have a voice all the way from inside jail. I'll still come after you. But inside, I was dying a slow death, because it seemed like every week there was a new fight. Every week there was a new problem. Every week, baptistry that didn't have a sign said slippery when wet. It hasn't had a sign for 50 years. A kitchen that you say was never finalized. For heaven's sakes, it's a 50-year-old kitchen that have served You, not you, but you city officials, multiple dinners here, when you've asked us to expand, it's licensed as a commercial kitchen, and now you're saying you want me to rip it apart because it was never finalized when this building was built 50 years ago. You are absolutely out of your mind crazy. Long story short, we needed an architect. We couldn't afford an architect. We got the best architect in Northern California. He is an architect. He is a civil engineer and a structural engineer. He's all three wrapped into one. And he went to work for us, redoing plans, making proposals to rezone the property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going again with our set of plans, and it gets so convoluted. I don't know where to tell you, what not to tell you. But let me put it this way. The very property that they wanted to shut down, guess what? We found a way now that they're going to let us expand. So you just figure that out. Okay? But in the process, the person that issued the directive to close us down died suddenly. And when he died suddenly, all of a sudden, it was, oh no, now how can we help them stay alive? How do we put the lid back on this can that we opened? How do we close it back up? And how do we move forward? Because the political ramification, if we close, would be horrendous for them. So bottom line is now we get to expand. Okay. So. Just between you and I, the code that said we were too big for the property changed the code, and now we're not too big and we're okay and we can get bigger. Why didn't we do that up front? Why didn't we change the code up front? Why do you have to do all this? Anyway, okay, why did I tell you that? Because I prayed prayers. God, get us out. God, go kill somebody if you have to. I don't care what it takes. Just wipe out all the city officials. We got people in our church will take their positions, okay? Just do whatever it takes. I don't like this mess, and this is just killing me. God didn't do any of that, but he got us through, okay? You see, we could have cut and run. We could have done all kinds of things, but we didn't. Okay, so the children of Israel, when they're coming out of Egypt, they're faced with the promised land that God has promised them. Their journey from Egypt was to be a very short journey. They'd make it within a week, week and a half, 2 weeks' time. They would have been in the promised land. But Moses says he picks 12 spies, and he says to the 12 spies, go out and spy the land. This is what he tells them. He said, go see where their armies are. Go see if the land is fruitful and is the land of milk and honey. Has it got great vegetation? Go see whether the cities are fortified or not. He did not tell them to go and determine whether they could win the battle. He didn't tell them that. Because here's why. It was obvious that they could not win the battle because it would take God to do it. Okay, never look at your problem, because if you look at your problem at that level, it will always seem bigger than you. It is bigger than you. What I just explained that we went through and we're still going through it, it is bigger than us. But we have a God that is bigger than it. And that's what you have to look at. So the 10 spies go out, two spies, Joshua and Caleb, 2 spies are looking at the God that is bigger. Yes, they're fortified. Yes, there are warriors. Yes, they're giants. Yes, we seem small in their sight. But our God will conquer. Our God will win the battle. 2, 10 are looking at the obstacle and not looking at God, which is ironic because they've just come out of Egypt. They've just seen God put 10 plagues on the Egyptian nation. They've gone through 10 separate, different plagues that were horrendous. They're freed by Pharaoh. They come out of Egypt. They plummet Egypt financially, is now bankrupt because God puts it on the Egyptians' hearts to give them money, to give them all their valuables as they're leaving. So they leave with the wealth of Egypt as free people, as a nation, and now they're coming to this crossroads where they're going to step into the promised land. During the journey, God feeds them with manna, called heavenly food. Every day there's manna on the ground to gather. There comes a time where there is no water. Moses speaks to the rock, and the rock produces water, begins to flow. So now they have water. God is leading them by a pillar of fire at night and a cloud by day. How much more miracle can you ask for? Man, I haven't had anything close to that in my life. I'd love to see a pillar of fire at night and a cloud by day telling me where to go. I'd love for God to just dish out some plagues on my enemies, you know, a little frog infestation and some locusts and some lice and, you know, turn the water into blood on them when they take a bath. It's all blood. I'd love for that to happen. They experience all of that, yet when they go in to cross into this land, they're spying. What do they see? Do they see anything of what God has done? How mighty God is? No, they're focused on the problem. And they decide to cut and run. Here's the thing. You can never really cut and run from your problem. If God ain't taking you through or taking you out, you're just stuck. And how you deal with it on your own will be how you deal with it on your own. But cutting and running don't work. Because the 10 said, we can't go take the land. We can't do it. So God said, okay, if you're not going to trust me and you can't go take the land, where do you think you're going to go? You can't go back. They'll kill you, and I'm going to protect you. And you don't want to go forward, so where does that leave you? It leaves you in the wilderness until you all die. They chose to live their life in the wilderness until they died. That was their choice. It was never God's choice. Now, here's the thing. I love to do simple math. And here's the thing. When you break it down, 10 said no, 2 said yes. When you break it down, it's 80.5% said no, and it's 15% roughly that said yes. What does that mean to me? That means that 80.5% of Christians will never go into the promises that God has promised them. They will live their Christian life in the wilderness. Oh, they'll get a little manna. They'll get a little heavenly water. They may get some quail brought and fed quail. Their clothes may never wear out, but they're still going to be stuck in the wilderness. They'll never get out of the wilderness. 2 of them, 15% ratio, said, we believe God, let's go take it. The ironic thing is the entire nation, God waits for them to die. Because he said, none of you will go in and possess the land because you didn't believe me for it. So you're going to stay in the wilderness till you're dead. Guess who the two only guys of that generation don't die? Guess who they are? Joshua and Caleb. Because they were the 2 that believed God. So God said, I'm going to keep you alive so that you'll experience the promise that I promised because you believed me for it. So the question then is, what percentage do you want to be in? Do you want to be in the 80.5%? Or do you want to be in the 15%? That's a choice you and I get to make. What percentage do you want to be in? God doesn't decide that. He wants 100%. But we make the decision all the time, what percentage we're going to be in. Going into the promised land was never promised to be easy. It was going to be battle after battle as they took the land. It was never promised to be easy. But it was filled with God's blessing. But they chose to stay in the wilderness. It's amazing to me how many people choose to stay in the wilderness. Don't have to. Crazy if you do. But they chose to cut and run. Only there was no place to run. How stupid is that? You know what? Even if you're not going to believe God, it would have still been better to make a run for that promised land than to die off in the wilderness. That's a horrible way to live. You know, if I die, I'm going to die trying at least. But I'm not going to just waste away in the wilderness. But yet so many people do. The second thing is, God will at times lead you into conflict, not away from it. See, we think all conflict's of the devil. We think all obstacle is of the devil. Well, that's just the devil. I rebuke that thing in the name of Jesus. We rebuke everything that we don't like. Some husbands rebuke in the name of Jesus their wives every other morning. We think everything that doesn't go right for us is of the devil. Sometimes it's God ordained. Sometimes it's God sent. So when they're coming now out of the wilderness, and Joshua is told, take the people, we're going to come out of the wilderness. Last of the generations has died up, except for you and Caleb. Let's go. We're going to go into the promised land. The first thing he comes across that is guarding the promised land is Jericho. It's Jericho. And you all know the story about Jericho. They marched around 7 times and the walls came down and all that. You know, when you look at it structurally, God's a great engineer because he knew that many thousands and thousands of people marching around every day and on the 7th day 7 times and blowing a horn, that the vibration would disrupt the structure of the foundation and the walls would come down on themselves. Okay, in Joshua chapter 6, verse 1 and 2 says, God is speaking to Joshua. Jericho was shut up tight like a drum because of the people of Israel. They had heard, the children of Israel, that a God was fighting for them, so they closed the city up. And no one going in and no one going out. They're a fortified city, and I think some years back we taught on it, and I showed you pictures of Jericho, what Jericho would have looked like based on the ruins. It was walled up, it was walled up again, it was walled up again, and it sat on a small mountain that you could not scale and penetrate. That's why God gave them orders to not attack it, but to march around it and bring it down from the inside. Okay, all right, so this is what God says to Joshua. God spoke to Joshua and said, look sharp. Now, I've already given Jericho to you, along with its king and its elite force. Look sharp. I've already given Jericho to you with its king and its elite force. So, are you catching that? God says, I have, past tense. Okay? It blows my mind. God speaks in past tense for something to happen in the future as though it's going to happen in the future, but it's already happened in the past. Can you get your mind around that? Who does that? Who speaks in the past, speaks of the past as though it's the future, it's a future event that has already happened in the past. That's the Matrix. Hollywood stole the Matrix from God. God is the Matrix. Living in the past as though it's the future in the present. I think all Christians should dress in black capes and look like they're from the Matrix, because we truly live in a different realm where things don't always make sense. But what was God saying? God was saying to Joshua, I'm going to lead you into battle. You can't go around it. I'm not leading you around it. I'm not leading you away from it. We're not going into the promised land by a different direction. I'm leading you straight towards Jericho. I wonder how many times God is leading us to a battle and we're fighting our way out of it. Well, I don't want to go into that. I don't want to do that. I want to get out. I want to go some other place. I want to do something cushy, and I don't want to do that. And yet God is leading us into the battle, and He speaks as we're going into it, and as we're obedient, He gives us the strategy to fight, and then He tells us, before we ever lift a hand, He tells us, I've already given you the victory. It's already been accomplished. You just need to walk it out. Anytime God leads you to a battle, it's because He's already provided victory. You just need to go through the battle and see where the victory is. See, we could have cut and run, but somehow deep inside, I never knew how God would get us out. I just knew that if I fought long enough and hard enough, the battle had already been won, past tense. I just needed to fight long enough and hard enough to see it in the present tense. When we looked at Bakersfield, I spent weeks absolutely stressed out. Deborah too. Saying, God, is this even possible? Is it even possible to do something that far away? Is it even possible? And what kind of a price am I personally going to have to pay? And I told our staff, I'm not doing this alone. We do it as a team or we don't do it at all, but I'm not doing it alone. I can't do it alone. I don't have that much time. I don't have that much strength to pull that off. And I had people come to me and said, Pastor, are you crazy? You're not no 30-year-old dude anymore, man. How can you pull that off? And I'd spent sleepless nights wrestling with God. Is this even possible? Is it even possible? You know what? I don't know that it is, but I do know that God makes it possible. I do know that if I keep moving forward, I do know that as a church, if we keep moving forward, God will win battles on our behalf that we don't believe are possible. Sometimes God will lead you into hard places, and the tendency is to think it's the devil. The tendency is to think that you're misled. The tendency is to think of anything that could possibly be a means of getting you out. Instead of saying, you know what? I'm going to go and fight this battle. Because I believe that God said it has already been won. Past tense, it has already been won before I even start fighting. So I'm just fighting to see the victory because the victory is already there. You may be facing things in your life right now, personal things in your life. You may be facing obstacles. You may face things where family. You may face things through addiction. You may face things through jail and prison. You may face things through your friends. You may face things through finding a job. Are you going to make it on the job? All kinds of things are coming your way, but it's how you deal with them that matters. Some things God will make a way for you to escape, but sometimes He doesn't. Sometimes he leads you head on into it. And he's saying, get your sword, get your shield, put your helmet on. I've already given you the battle, but you're going to have to swing that sword a little bit. You're going to have to duck, dodge, and weave a little bit, because you will win the battle, because I've already declared that you're the winner. You're the winner before you got in the ring. But get in the ring and sock the guy a few times and experience the victory that I've already promised you. Truth be told, most Christians won't get in the ring. They won't get in the ring. If it's too hard, I ain't going to do it. Not everything in God comes easy. Sometimes there's a price to pay. Sometimes there's sacrifices to be made. Sometimes there's some flesh that's got to get killed along the way. But in the end, it is all worth it. Last thing. When God doesn't lead you out, He will always lead you through. Some battles are up front. You see them clear, light, and you walk towards it knowing that you're going to have the fight. Okay? Sometimes there's giants in the land, and you want to be the 15% that says we can do it, and not the 80.5% that says no way and live life in the wilderness. Sometimes it's an obstacle there that God is leading you to fight your way through it, and it requires a choice. Do I face that Jericho, or do I turn around and retreat and try to go around it? You know, if they went around it, Jericho would always be there in their life. See, some problems you want to go around it, and God's saying, no, let's kill that problem right now, because if you don't, it will always be there. There is a third battle, and that's where we're at right now. It's when God doesn't lead you, but you find yourself in a situation that you didn't create. You see, David is coming up as a young man, as a 17-year-old youth. You know the story, David and Goliath. He fights Goliath. He wins. Nobody else will go up against Goliath. He does. He kills Goliath. He becomes instantly a national hero. Saul gets jealous. King Saul gets jealous that he's now more popular than Saul. So Saul decides to put him over some military platoons and send him out to battle some of the fiercest enemies and some of the hardest battlements. He sends him out thinking he'll get killed in battle, but he never gets killed. He comes back victorious every time. So people make him even a bigger national hero. Now Saul feels threatened that his kingship is at risk, so he personally now tries to kill David. David didn't do anything to bring that upon himself. He was just being who David is. And God was causing him to be victorious. He didn't do it. He didn't speak against Saul. He didn't challenge Saul. In fact, he showed Saul utmost respect. But something entered Saul's heart that says, I need to kill David. David is a threat. And he goes after David. David goes on the run for years. And there's some debate whether it was 3 years, 14 years, what have you. I don't know. I tend to think it was longer than shorter. But David goes on the run from Saul for years, trying to escape Saul catching him. In fact, there are some times that Saul gets so close to him and doesn't know that David is hiding right around the corner with his men. That's how close they get. That's how close Saul gets to killing him. At one point, Saul goes into a cave, happens to be the very cave that David's men are hiding in. He has to go potty. So he goes into the cave to go potty, and David sneaks up behind him and cuts the corner of his robe off as a testimony. That's how close I came to you and could have killed you, but I didn't. Amazing. David didn't ask for it. Have you ever gone through something in life that you didn't ask for? You didn't do anything to bring it upon yourself, but you went through it. It's just there. It's in your backyard. It's in your face anyway. Because somebody decided to bring it on and you don't know why. Somehow, some way, they just decided to come after you. So as I looked at this, David wrote, I forget the exact number of Psalms within the Bible, but David wrote 4 Psalms while he was running from Saul. 4 different Psalms. And I want to read a little portion out of each Psalm, each of the 4 Psalms. Psalms 57. Psalms 57 is the Psalm of David while he's running from Saul. And I would encourage you, I'm only going to read a couple verses, but I would encourage you to take this back and read the whole Psalm and see what David is going through. See the turmoil that he's going through. Why is this man trying to kill me? Why is he chasing me? I didn't do anything to offend him. In fact, I could have killed him in the cave, but I didn't. I spared his life. Why would he then want to keep coming after me? Psalms chapter 57, he says this in verse 1 through verse 3. He says, be good to me, God. Be good to me. And now I've run to you for dear life. I'm hiding out under your wings, under the hurricane blows, until the hurricane blows over. I call out to high God, the God who holds me together. He sends orders from heaven and he saves me. He humiliates those who kick me around. God delivers generous love. He makes good on his word. He is calling out to God, help me. I have nowhere to turn. I'm running around. I'm running for my life. I run from cave to cave, mountain to mountain, city to city. Everywhere I go, this guy's hot on my tails trying to kill me. He's got a massive army with him. I can't fight him. Help me. Then you go to Psalms chapter 59. Psalms chapter 59, verse 1 through 5. It says, my God, rescue me from my enemy. Defend me from these mutineers. Rescue me from their dirty tricks. Save me from their hitmen. Desperados have ganged up on me. They're hiding in ambush for me. I did nothing to deserve this, God. Cross no one, wrong no one. All the same, they're after me. Determined to get me. He goes as far as to say to God, wake up and see for yourself. You're God. Do you see the desperation in his voice? Help me, you're God. Come on, I'm going to die here. It gets so bad that he leaves the country for a while, and that turns into a disaster. He gets robbed, his family taken from him, and all the men, his whole little band of criminals, they get plummeted. They're robbed by bandits. Their families taken from them while they're not there. It gets horrible. This guy's life is in an absolute shambles. He, at one other point, has to disguise his identity because they know who he is and he's afraid they'll capture him. So he decides to be a crazy man and he puts spit all over him and he slobbers and he goes around writing on the wall and in the dirt. And so they look at him and they go, certainly that's not David. That's just some lunatic on the street. And he has to do all that just to avoid getting captured. Seems like a pretty rough life. I am crazy, but I've yet had to act it. Chapter 142. I'll read this last one. Chapter 142. Verse 1 through 7. I cry out loudly to God. Loudly I plead with God for mercy. I spill out all my complaints before him. I spell out all my troubles in details. As I sink in despair, my spirit ebbing away. You know how I'm feeling. Know the danger I'm in, the traps hidden in my path. Look right, look left. There's not a soul who cares what happens. Have you ever felt that way? You share with your best friend all that you're going through and they just like don't care. Have you ever done that? Well, how you doing? Man, it just couldn't get worse. I feel like crap. And then they go, oh yeah, you know what I did last night? I went out to dinner with my friends and went and saw a movie, and they didn't hear a word you said because they don't care. You're going through it alone. I'm up against the wall with no exit. It's just me, all alone. I cry out, God, call out. You're my last chance, my only hope for life. Oh, listen, please listen. I've never been this low. That's David. Why didn't David see, David couldn't cut and run because there was no place to run. He was being hunted. Why didn't God take David out of that situation the day it began? Why didn't God do that? Saul ended up dying in battle at the end. David never touched Saul. And David was basing that on where the Old Testament says, touch not mine anointed. You don't touch him. God will, but you don't. David had the opportunity to kill him on 2 different times. His men told him, kill Saul. His men told him that. David said, no, I am not disobeying God's word. As bad as it is for me, as bad as this guy wants me, I am not going to do that. I'm not doing it. And in the end, Saul dies in battle. What was to prevent God from taking Saul out earlier on? Absolutely nothing. So why did God allow David to go through all of that turmoil? Well, I can give you a couple reasons. Because it was after this that David is made king. There's a battle. David does not go into that battle. Saul goes into the battle. Saul gets killed. Within a very short time after, they make David king as Saul's replacement. They make David king and the nations come together. Okay, that's a whole nother story. David is about ready to come into the promise that God promised him. But God had to do one more thing in his life to make sure he was ready. That was to bring him to the brink of disaster. Think about it. David's from a poor family, but he's never faced disaster. He's always had a daddy that took care of him, and older brothers that cared for him. Goliath defies the army. He sees Goliath. He says, I'm going to go down and kills him. He gets his sling. He gets his rocks. He goes down, kills Goliath. The truth is, any one of those brothers or anybody in the military should have done that. It shouldn't have been David, but nobody would, so David did. He becomes a national hero overnight. What do you do with a kid that is inexperienced, right? The only claim to fame he has is he killed Goliath. He has no experience. He has no military experience. He's never ruled anybody. He's never commanded anything except that Saul has put him in charge of different armies only to try to kill him. There's lessons that this young man needs to learn before he can rule the nation, and he's learning them while he's running from Saul. One, If God said, touch not mine anointed, then you best not touch God's anointed. No matter whether the man is evil, cruel, insane, or not, you don't touch him. Only God does. There is opportunity 2 different times for him to kill Saul. Once while Saul was sleeping, he went and actually stole his water jug, got that close to him, but would not kill him, even though everybody is telling him, kill him, kill him, kill him. He doesn't. He's obeying God. He's learning to obey God at any cost. He could have taken the easy way out and killed Saul. But he's learning to obey God at any cost. How many of us do that? At any cost. Second, he's learning to trust God with his life to keep him safe. Even though Saul is that close and he's hiding and Saul's right there, he's trusting God that Saul won't turn around and see him and to keep him safe. As king over that nation, he's going to go to war with other nations, and you can't have a king with a fearful heart leading troops. You got to have a king that is fearless leading troops, knowing that God will fight their battle. And he has absolute assurance, and he's able to get out front and said, we're going that way. We're going to kill those guys. Follow me. He's learning that skill. He's learning that on the run. He's learning that as low as you can get, God is still there. Well, that's a hard one. That is a hard one to learn. I like being on the mountaintops and knowing God's there. Don't put me in no valley. I don't want to go there. But sometimes you got to go there and you got to hit those low points. Sometimes you got to hit so low that you don't think there's an up anymore, and you find out that God is still there. And that's what builds character. That's why sometimes God doesn't lead you out, He leads you through. Because He's doing something in you. You know, we like to share about people that go before the courts and God gets them out. God gives them a free ticket. That happens so many times, it blows my mind. People that are going up for sentencing and all of a sudden their sentence is waived because they're at City Church. Okay, but what happens to the one individual that doesn't happen? What happens to the individual that goes before the judge and the judge gives them the sentence? What happens to that guy? You see, we're so used to God getting us out, but what happens when God doesn't get us out and we actually got to walk through that season in life, those years, whatever it is? What happens then? How do you face that? I have 3 pastors right now that come to mind. 3 different men. One facing a life sentence. He used that life sentence to go to Bible school while in prison. Called to be in ministry. Got out. He was not to be released ever. The warden was so impressed with his life change in prison and the new person he became and the fact that he went through. The warden petitioned the governor for an early release, and they released him. He served a number of years. And I believe he's in his mid-40s, pastoring a church in Nevada. I went up and saw him months ago with Deborah. We went and saw them for their grand opening. We were there for their grand opening. And I said, here stands before me as a man that was to spend life in prison. Look at that guy now. Look what God can do in his life. But it wouldn't have happened if he didn't go to prison. Pastor in Reno. Tahoe. Same thing, him and his wife both in prison. Gang member, heroin addict in prison. God gets a hold of him. Comes out, starts a church in Tahoe, ministering mainly to youth, and that church is growing because of all the youth that are just coming. Got another pastor in Modesto. Got sent away for 8 years. Part of, I forget if it's HIV or the Norteños in Modesto, but he went to Bible school while in prison, come out, and then I was pastoring a church. They just moved into a bigger building, and they're doing fantastic, reaching Modesto. It would have been nice if they would have said, you know, I was going to be sentenced to 8 years, but God got me off. But would they have ever gone to Bible school had they been gotten off? Would they have ever gone into the ministry? Would God have ever had the time to work that deeply in their lives to prepare them for years of ministry? Probably not. Sometimes God doesn't give you a pass. Sometimes God doesn't give you a pass. Sometimes you got to walk through some stuff, but there's a purpose, there's a divine purpose in it. God is doing something in it. And that's what you got to embrace. If He doesn't get you out, He will get you through. He will get you through. And in the end, you will say, it was well worth it. It was well worth it. We are on the back end of this fight over zoning and all of that with the city. And for the first time, I can honestly say it was well worth it. Because I've learned some stuff in God. I've learned to be stronger. I've learned when to be tough. I learned when to fight as though you're fighting for your very life. And I learned a whole lot about politics that I would not have learned had I not gone through that we had not gone through that. I'm at a place where I can say, would I do it again? Yeah, I would. God wasn't going to deliver us from it. He was going to deliver us through it. And there was a reason for that, because we are stronger today than we've ever been as a result. Amen? Let's all stand together. And I'm going to ask you as we close out, look at where you're at. Where are you at? What are you facing? The promised land, but you believe that the fight's too big, and you're just going to stay in the wilderness and be content. Be content with a little manna and a little water. Or do you want more? Is there a Jericho there that you've got to battle and defeat? Then get ready to battle and defeat it, because you can go around it, but it'll still be there. Or like David, are you in a situation that you did nothing to get you there, but you're just there? You're just there. Make no sense of it. You're just there. God's not making a way to get out. You got to go through it. But He will get you through. And in the end, you'll be stronger and better and be able to say, I'm glad I went through that. Amen? Amen.